evolved to win at all costs. They don't care about their losses, so long as they're the last ones standing.
Primarily categorised as horror, the Aliens franchise is a series that arguably peaked with its first entry. While James Cameron's gung-ho sequel is rightly celebrated, it was more action-packed war movie than slow-burn horror. This change did it no harm at the time, but it's a series that has struggled to really find solid ground since 1986. Alien 3 returned to the horror roots with some success, albeit heavily influenced by studio involvement, while almost every entry since has been considerably hit and miss. Games have been no different, and even though the franchise easily lends itself to several genres, this may be why Aliens Fireteam Elite often struggles to find its centre.
Hey, Adam from GodIsAGeek.com here. Sorry to interrupt, but if you wouldn't mind just hitting the big old subscribe button and maybe the bell to notify you of every new video we release, we'd be really grateful. Thank you so much and enjoy the video.
In fairness, most games in the series, such as the infamous Aliens Colonial Marines, have had a hard time capturing the essence of the franchise. The closest and most impressive attempt was Creative Assembly's 2014 Alien Isolation. Despite being somewhat drawn out, Isolation succeeded in nailing the sense of raw terror introduced in the 1979 original. Isolation did so well because it picked a genre and leaned heavily into it. It was designed as a horror game with very few attempts at even dark humour and very little full-on action. No game yet has managed to do the same with Aliens' desperate bug hunt action. Aliens Fireteam Elite almost gets it right, but fails in some pretty key areas. For example, it's a bit of a tonal mess. Set some 10 years after the events of LV-426, it exists in a weird place in the franchise timeline. We have a universe here where the Colonial Marine Corps seem to know all about the xenomorph threat and are routinely dispatched to deal with the issue. This throws up a few problems. Firstly, it discredits entries like Alien Resurrection because, well, why would any company still be trying to breed these things covertly so far in the future? And secondly, it begs a very important question. Why, when hunting a species that can insta-kill you on contact and will bleed concentrated acid all over you, would you go into battle with them wearing a sleeveless t-shirt? Because that's what you do. Modelled almost stubbornly on the aesthetic of Aliens, your band of rough, tough hombres head into battle woefully unprepared. One medkit per marine, a squad of 3 when there are 4 distinct classes, no acid-proof gear. The list kinda goes on. You might think I'm being unfair here, but what's the point of setting a game in this universe and then doing nothing remotely interesting with it? You're shown to have synthetic combat units who can double as stand-in soldiers, so why risk human life and propagating the xenomorph threat at all? Anyway, the story follows that you've travelled to Katanga Station, a research outpost on planet LV-895, where the dastardly company are still trying to weaponise the alien, which makes sense, given the legions of weaponised tigers and honey badgers that real-world militaries deploy on the front lines every day. Your squad of hardened space marines, or you and 2 fairly stupid AI synths if you play alone, are dispatched on search and rescue missions to secure key personnel. Weyland-Yutani have been experimenting with ancient technology, xenobiology and various other unethical sciences, which has led to the station and surface being overrun by aliens. And I do mean overrun. There are thousands of xenomorphs in this game. As you traverse darkened corridors and the 1 or 2 areas that aren't darkened corridors, you'll constantly be warned of approaching swarms. Aliens will come at you from all directions, across the ceiling, up the walls, out of vents and ducts and doorways. Aliens Fireteam Elite apes the Left 4 Dead formula just enough to be recognisable, but also putting its own spin on most of it. Sadly, the standard enemies, literally referred to as fodder in the options menu, render the xenomorph runner, based on the dog alien from Alien 3, about as threatening as medium-sized collies. They run at you, and if they get through your hail of gunfire, will actually sort of headbutt you. This is a creature that has been shown multiple times to be an instant killer. Not in Aliens Fireteam Elite though. Much more threatening are the big ones. These come in various archetypes. There's a spitter, which spits, a burster, which bursts near you, covering you in acid. Then there's the drone that will appear, do some damage and run away. The prowler hides in corners and doorways and pounces on you, necessitating some quick QTE work. Weirdly, despite the acid blood visibly eating through the environment, it does no permanent harm to you even when you're covered in it. There are 4 campaigns, each containing 3 missions. Despite the layout and enemies changing, the formula does not. Each mission sees you fighting your way to some form of machine that needs activating, which you then stand in front of until either a countdown ends or all the xenomorphs are dead. This repeats on average 3 times per mission. I can't pretend it's not fun though, but a little variety would have gone a long way. There's one escort mission and a pretty frantic escape in the late game, but besides those 2 standout moments, the gameplay is pretty similar mission to mission. It's elevated when you play with others, of course. Partly this is because if you're playing alone you can't make much use of the different classes. The AI synths come in one bland flavour with no special abilities to synergise with and about as much spatial awareness as a half-blind hippo on roller skates. They shoot and throw grenades and will try to revive you before clearing any immediate threats, which basically means if you go down when you're playing solo you're probably going to fail the mission. There's a fair bit of thought behind the classes though. The gunner is your standard shoot and explode stuff class, but the doc can heal and buff the group, and the technician has a rechargeable auto turret. By far though, the best class to play as is the demolisher. Silly title aside though, this class can carry the standard M41A1 pulse rifle as well as the rig mounted smart gun, and by god is the smart gun fun. It fits perfectly in universe, mows through enemies in seconds and has so much ammo that Cold Iron will probably nerf it. You can swap it out for a heavy flamethrower, grenade launcher or RPG, but you won't, it's too cool. The Demolisher also has a down blast that stuns enemies including armoured warriors and shoulder mounted rocket launchers. It's just mental. As in Left 4 Dead, enemies randomly spawn and the hidden cache containing decals, weapon skins and gun mods moves around each time. You're never quite sure what's coming, which, when playing with friends, really elevates the tension. For a few missions you'll face enemies with guns, at which point Aliens Fireteam Elite turns into a very competent cover shooter. As you level up weapons through use, they'll increase in usefulness thanks to quicker reloading or improved damage and such. Leveling your class, however, gives you perk slots into which you can socket buffs and mods to improve your survivability. It's a solid system with a huge amount of options. The writing lets the game down though. One minute your intel officer Herrera is making jokes about the aliens' lethality, the next you're supposed to be scared when an NPC squad you've never met is killed off camera, and you hear them screaming. The tonal shift then is weird. One minute Herrera gets all serious and grave and then goes right back to cracking jokes a few minutes later. Fireteam Elite struggles to pick a lane. On one hand it wants the gung-ho abandon of Aliens, on the other it wants the deep space claustrophobic horror of the original. Sadly, it works about as well here as it did in Alien vs Predator. Once you finish the 4th campaign you'll unlock a 5th class and Horde mode. I spent a while in Horde mode alone and with others, and honestly it feels no different to the game. Yes, you can buy consumables between waves, but the rewards are so stingy that you'll barely afford anything useful each time. It needs some serious balancing, but then so does a lot of Aliens Fireteam Elite. While the normal enemies take one burst of a pulse rifle to obliterate and a warrior takes rockets, mines and 2 full clips of a smart gun, something isn't calibrated right. There's some variety thanks to challenge cards though, which pose a difficulty modifier for increased rewards. They come in a few rarities, but there's no real penalty for failing the set challenge. Oh, and you can't stop, like, ever. Each mission is around 20 to 30 minutes long and you can't pause the game. There are also no safe spaces, and standing still for more than 10 seconds, even in the room you've just cleared, will attract prowling Xenos. It's annoying, and because there are no mid-mission checkpoints, you'll need to finish the one you're in every time you start, or begin all over again. Perhaps the biggest plus in Aliens Fireteam Elite's box is the most obvious. It's set in this universe. There are so many iconic lines, sounds, sights that fans of the franchise will easily forgive many of the shortcomings. The ping of the motion tracker, the squeal of the xenomorph, even sound effects like a marine grunting in pain, I swear, are lifted directly from Cameron's movie. The atmosphere when the aliens are swarming at you and alarms are beeping, the tracker is going and the pulse rifle is screaming its legendary rattle whine. Fireteam Elite nails this for a few minutes at a time, and it's enough. Just. A cross between a Left 4 Dead style team shooter, a class-based RPG like Outriders, and tower defense, Aliens Fireteam Elite does some impressive things with the sights and sounds of its universe. Strip away that element though, and you're left with a fairly repetitive third-person shooter that struggles to tell an engaging story or deliver enough raw excitement to sustain you through the duller moments. It's an absolute win if you're a fan of the franchise and if you stick to the multiplayer, but if you're a solo player and the universe does nothing for you, there's not much here worth exploring, and for that reason I'm going to score Aliens Fireteam Elite a 7 out of 10. Hey, hope you enjoyed that review of Aliens Fireteam Elite. If you did, please hit like and subscribe. Maybe tag the bell icon too so you're kept up to date with all the news, views, reviews, previews and what have you that we post on a given day. And if you want to support us via our Patreon, you can go ahead and do that. We really appreciate everything that you guys do for us. In the meantime, I've been Mick Fraser for God is a Geek. That was a review of Aliens Fireteam Elite, and you guys have been lovely. Bye.